Future Sense is a podcast edited from the radio show of the same name, broadcast on Bay FM in Byron Bay, Australia at bayfm.org. Hosted by Nick Jeans and well-known international futurist Steve McDonald, Future Sense provides a fresh, deep analysis of global trends and emergent technologies. How can we identify the layers of growth, personally, socially, and globally? What are the signs missed, the truths being denied? Science, history, politics, psychology, ancient civilizations, alien contact, the new psychedelic revolution, cryptocurrency and other disruptive and distributed technologies, and much more. This is Future Sense.
You're now tuned, as I said, to Future Sense, and a great pleasure to welcome my co-host, Steve McDonald. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Nick.
Lovely to see you here. And we have some wonderful other people here in the studio with us this morning.
We do. We've got special guest Dr. Stephen Booth here from Melbourne, who's been on the show a few times. Welcome, Steve.
Good morning.
And also Ashoka Houlahan from the Quantum Uplift Clinic here in Byron Bay. Welcome, Ashoka.
Good morning, Steve. Good morning, Nick.
And we're here to talk today about the future of healing.
Yeah, we'll talk about health, well-being, and how it relates to shifting consciousness. And we might start by, for those people who might be listening live or perhaps to the podcast later and haven't heard you on the show before, Steve Booth, would you like to just give a quick intro of who you are and what your modalities have been over the years?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a doctor of Chinese medicine. That's been my most relevant and recent study. And before that, I was a transpersonal counsellor and shiatsu therapist for a long time. I also practiced Tai Chi, Bagua, and Qigong, and meditation, long-time meditator.
And Stephen and I are all Kung Fu buddies. We met through our Kung Fu school.
Yeah, we did. Something to bond over.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. And Ashoka, tell us about what you do and a little bit about your clinic.
Thanks, Steve. We've opened a clinic in the Byron industrial estate called Quantum Uplift. And Quantum Uplift would best be described as a cellular rejuvenation clinic. And our focus there is, we're not medical practitioners at the clinic, but we use some of the most advanced wellness technologies from around the world. And our focus is on really the mantra: if you want to be well, heal the cell. And so we have things in the clinic, or technologies in the clinic, that include frequency, voltage, oxygen, red and near infrared light therapy, hydrogen therapy, all things which focus on improving cellular function. And what we find is, if we can get the cells working properly, then that has these positive flow-ons throughout the rest of the body.
That's awesome. Thank you. And we'll get you to talk a little bit further about the different technologies that you use perhaps later on in the show. That's great. I'd like to start the conversation out just by talking about the kind of ailments or conditions that you're seeing presenting in your clients at the moment, and how that may be related to shifting consciousness in some way, because I think this is an area that really isn't being discussed very much, and certainly the people that I talk to who are going through significant shifts in consciousness often have physical symptoms, psychological symptoms, and of course no one's talking about it. They don't know what it is, why it's happening, and those sorts of things. So Steve, what's your experience?
I guess as a result of the times that we're living, we're now exposed to a whole range of different things that we've never had before, including chemistry and biochemistry, different types of emissions, and especially the news out there is often confusing and conflicting, and can cause a lot of worry and anxiety. So people are coming in with a lot of confusion and what's happening in the world and where am I, and this perpetuating fear and anxiety type of stuff. But also adapting to that and expressing new experiences that people might be having, that might be called a spiritual emergence type of process as well, where there'll be things that they'll share that, I've had these unusual experiences, or this has happened to me and I haven't really been comfortable telling people about it because I think I'm going crazy, and this kind of thing. And that's, again, a reflection of opening to new sensory abilities, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And we often talk on this show about how our sensory perception seems to be expanding as we move through, as we develop through these layers of consciousness. And various layers, there are heart openings that occur, just a general increase in sensory perception in terms of particularly interaction with other people, and what we can sense going on in other people and about other people, and sometimes people report having difficulty trying to figure out whether something they're feeling in their body is actually their own, or maybe they're picking up on something that's going on in someone else nearby.
Increase in empathy and so on as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes it helps to reframe that, where people have that idea that they're helping someone by feeling their things for them, where I'll often flip that on people and say, oh, well, maybe that's a type of theft, and they might need that experience to go through what they're going, and maybe you don't need to carry that on, and just consider it as awareness.
Certainly, in my experience in the psychedelic world, it's a very common thing that people report when they're doing group work in altered states, is that often they'll pick up on someone else's experience somehow, and often in the room there'll be shared themes too, and network centric. The often reported experience where people will feel like they're sort of carrying the weight of personal, but it's coming from somewhere. Do you have experience of that, Ashoka?
I label that something in my own terms. I call it from pain to purpose. And so quite often waiting for us, which is the purpose, or I guess what we're talking about is shifting into a higher state of consciousness is associated with that purpose. So in my own experience, I suffered from depression. And I went through 7 years of depression and got diagnosed, and the doctors gave me some options. They said, well, we can give you drugs, or we can give you some counselling and things like that. And they just didn't resonate with me. And from there, I went and saw an energy worker, and the energy worker did some energy work. And from that, I was guided to go and find these different technologies. And through that, was able to actually heal myself of depression. And through that, I didn't know it, but I've found my purpose.
Yeah, right.
And so for 7 years of pain, and this is what I say to many people that come into the clinic, you got to know you can come out the other side of this. And when you do come out the other side of it, there's often a gift that's waiting for you. And that is synonymous with an elevated state of consciousness as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I can identify that because, years ago I went through a breakdown from post-traumatic stress disorder. And at the time, it actually happened very soon after I discovered Claire Graves' work. And I was just starting to get my head around it. And I recognised when I was going through my breakdown that it was actually a transformation, and that sort of gave me an understanding that I was going somewhere. I wasn't going to be stuck in this, and that made a huge difference, I think.
Absolutely. And just if you don't listen to this show, or you just tuned in, Claire W. Graves' work that Steve just alluded to there is the basis of much of what we talk about here. Not everything, but it's a model that we spend a lot of time on. And if you'd like to tune in more to that specifically, please tune into our podcasts, which you can do through most podcast platforms, and certainly through our website, FutureSense.it. We'll give you those details in the future. But you can hear there's a very rich discussion is going to happen here today. It's already started that way. If you'd like to join that discussion at any time, you can tune in on our text line. Drop us a text on 04373 4119. 04373 4119 comes up here on our screen here, and we can respond to that. Anything you'd like to comment on or bring attention to. Also like to say we've got a couple of giveaways today. I'll talk about the second one a bit later on today, but Ashoka has given us a $100 voucher to Quantum Uplift, his business out there that he's talking about in the industrial estate in Byron. We'll give that away fairly soon. Don't call just yet, but if you are a subscriber to BFM, you know the drill, 66807 999. I'll let you know when that is, maybe in about 10 or 15 minutes.
You're tuned to Future Sense with Nick Jeans and Steve McDonald. Engage, emerge, activate, and spiral up.
Yes, you're tuned to BFM, and you are on Future Sense at 9:23 this morning with Nick Jeans, myself, and Steve McDonald, and our special guests this morning, Dr. Stephen Booth and Ashoka Houlahan, whose his business out in the industrial estate is called Quantum Uplift, and we'll start to give away that $100 voucher. Thank you so much, Ashoka, for that very shortly. Yes.
We're talking about health, wellbeing, and transformation, and we were just before the break talking about symptoms that may be related to shifting consciousness. And Stephen, I'm just curious to ask you whether there's any particular treatment or angle that you're finding is commonly needed around people who are clearly going through some sort of transformational process.
Yeah. So from my point of view, the key thing seems to be internal alignment. And what I mean by that specifically is, Ashoka was talking about finding purpose on the other side of pain. So this internal alignment can be, we know what it's like when you're not in alignment. Your head and your heart want different things. You have an internal conflict. There's a battle going on. So shoring up that those internal feelings and structures is really helpful. Having a sense of what's me and what's not me in terms of sensitivity is also something that's really useful. And in Chinese medicine we talk about 3 treasures: blood, qi, and jing, and shen. Sorry. So we need to make sure there's enough nourishment and grounding so that we're here having that human experience and complete and whole.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm finding that grounding seems to be a big issue. And I guess, we could probably go into sidetracks about why that's the case, but often I'll come across people who are going through a big transformational process, and because they're often opening up to interdimensional awareness, there seems to be the focus is removed from grounding to some extent, and I often find that people need to just do some kind of grounding practice
to be back in their bodies
to reintegrate and align. Yeah, absolutely.
And that can also help make sense of those different experiences of different ways of being and different realities, to come back to just your senses and what's happening here right now in this moment, and to be present.
Yeah, and it really is about being a bridge, isn't it, between heaven and earth, as they say in
that's
Chinese philosophy.
Taoist way.
Yes, yeah. And I guess we've come through the scientific industrial era, which has been very materialistic, so very much focused on everyday life and the gross matter, the gross objects of everyday life, and then we're shifting and opening as we transition into the 6th layer of consciousness, into these more esoteric aspects, into the collective unconscious, as Jung termed it, and those sorts of things. And I guess it pays to continue to pay attention to grounding and not leave it behind entirely.
Yeah, I think that idea of paying attention is really important too. I mean, one of the features of the collapsing paradigm is to ignore stuff and keep going and push through. And the types of treatments are often around suppression or numbing things out, or putting a band-aid on it, or disconnecting the warning lights, as it were, so you can keep going, keep operating, faster, harder, stronger, all of that stuff, which can work for a little while and is useful at times, but you can't ignore that there's more going on than that, and there might be a time when a collapse or a breakdown or a breakthrough is required to move on.
It's interesting when you talk about grounding and the current paradigm that we've been living in for such a long time, because it occurred to me that we've been grounded in this paradigm, in the material things that we have, in the external things in our reality. And yet, what's coming now is a sort of how do we ground ourselves on an internal energetic level and physically with that too, an integrated level with all aspects of our being, rather than identifying out there, I'm okay because I've got that there and I've got my house and whatever I might have. So there's a big change there, I think, in what we ground ourselves through. So
yeah, it is a big change, and it's true to say that when we go through the individually oriented layers of consciousness, like the scientific industrial paradigm has been, it's all about the outside world and how do we change the outside world to fit with us, and of course that takes the attention off our inside world, but we come back to that when we go to the communal stages or layers of consciousness. And so the emerging paradigm, this relativistic, human-centric paradigm, is very much about looking inwards again. And I guess rebalancing is a huge theme in the emerging paradigm, and there seems to be an inevitability that we will go too far in that direction and leave the grounding behind for some time. But then when we come into second tier consciousness, it's integrative, and so that's the time when we put all the pieces together and actually do truly bridge heaven and earth. Yeah,
and as you're saying too about this layer and the sense of overwhelm and too much and confusion, sometimes these are all kind of symptoms of what you're saying, as we're sort of reorienting towards inwards more so, that actually that can also feel like there's too much outside and too much to deal with, and I can't find a place inside myself that centers me. And that's really the sort of goal in some ways, isn't it, in this kind of healing, I would say.
Yeah. Ashoka, your cell-centered approach, does grounding, is that something that comes to your attention in your work in your clinic?
Not so much from the cell-centered approach, but what we really try and do is help people raise their level of consciousness, their level of frequency. But at the same time, what you're saying is very, very true, because I think in today's day and age, we're all, or many of us, are looking for this spiritual upliftment. But at the same time, we need to be grounded whilst we're doing that. And so with one of our technologies, the biocharger, it uses some pulsed electromagnetic fields and frequencies and things like that. And with grounding, the concept of being connected to the earth, this is something the ancient and indigenous cultures have always known. And I think a lot of the things we have at the clinic, it's a blending of modern technology with ancient wisdom. So we do have technologies there that facilitate that, but at the same time we always respect the indigenous cultures that have always known that that's what they need.
Yeah, of course. And I think an important part of this process and grounding is to try and take a mind, body, spirit approach, an integrated approach. So you're not just thinking about your wellness and addressing things apart from the actual physical body, but also incorporating body movement. And of course, you've got the oxygen therapy, which involves body movement, haven't you? And just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so with our super oxygen saturation therapy, it does involve some exercise, whether that be treadmill, bike, or even on a yoga ball and lifting some weights, whatever the body can do. The purpose of that exercise is to get some flow rate of blood happening. And then what we do is we're connected to a breathing mask, and we breathe in 85% oxygen, which is 4 times more than normal room air. That's around about 21% oxygen. And we flood the cells with that oxygen. And the reason for that is our cells, inside our cells, we have these things called mitochondria. Mitochondria is what produces ATP or life force. Chinese will call it chi or ki. The yogis will call it prana. It's all the same thing. And the way they produce that is our food gets broken down into electrons, and electrons combine with oxygen in our mitochondria, which gives us more of this life force. So it's very hard for us to kind of show up in the world if we don't have that vitality. And if we're suffering from some level of chronic illness, it's really hard for us to move into that next level of consciousness, because we're basically in survival mode. We're trying to just survive and get through our day. And so the super oxygen saturation therapy works well with that. It also combines, we mix that up with some altitude contrast training. So we flood the body with oxygen, and then we deprive it of oxygen, which is taps into this field called biohacking, where we're hacking our biology. That creates certain physiological responses in the body for it to want to take up oxygen more. And we switch that up between high and low oxygen, the result being an increase in energy and taking lactic acid out of the body and a whole host of other benefits. Movement is a key part of it. Yes, increasing
efficiency too, isn't it, with that oxygen deprivation?
Absolutely.
So you've got a yin and yang approach.
That's correct. And so when we deprive the body of oxygen, it makes our cardiovascular network dilate and expand. And so when we then switch it back on, we're very much ready to take that up ourselves.
It's interesting you talk about the life force and the ATP, which I understand is short for adenosine triphosphate. Is that right?
That's correct.
I just googled that when we're talking. It says it's a complex organic chemical that provides energy to drive many processes in living cells. For example, muscle contraction, nerve impulse propagation, etc. It's interesting just to note that in this transition from the modern scientific industrial paradigm to the emerging paradigm, often one of the major symptoms is burnout. Because in the modern world, it's all about everything has to be harder and faster in order to be better or to succeed, right? And if you're not being successful, then you're not working hard enough or fast enough or long enough hours. And inevitably people burn out, which has given rise to the whole concept of like the sea change or tree change, where people have the corporate burnout and they've got to move to Byron Bay and,
Not to mention super smoothies and things like that as well.
Chill out. But and of course we've got all these conditions which are associated with that, like chronic fatigue.
And the depression, where it's depressed is deep rest is required.
That's nice
to have that collapse.
Very, very, very cool. Very, very interesting.
For all of you out there, strangers in a strange land, you're grokking Future Sense here on Bay FM.
Bay FM 999, and this is Future Sense with Nick and Stephen, our special guest Ashoka and Stephen. It's 9:39 here. A couple of texts. First up, someone has written in and said, best way to ground is to walk barefoot on the earth surprising how many people walk on the beach in shoes. Thanks to Paul for that. Yeah, very, very good point. And just before I go to the second text, I should mention we're going to run this Quantum Uplift from Ashoka. Thank you, $100 value voucher for his business out there in the industrial estate. And Steve and I have been there a number of times, and it's fantastic. So I suggested that if you're interested in winning this, call us up, 6687 Of course, you do have to be a subscriber to Bay FM, and if you're not, you can do that straight away as well. We really encourage you to do that. It's valuable because, for example, if you go and pay $70 now to be a subscriber and you win this, it's worth $100. So you're ahead already. So please do that. Now, the other text that we got in, thank you very much, was about, you mentioned hydrogen therapy before as part of your suite of offerings out there. And this person has written in and said, I met a bloke who showed me hydrogen capsules to add to water. Can you ask how it is that water could need extra hydrogen?
That's a great question. Thanks for that. Water doesn't need extra hydrogen, but our bodies really need extra hydrogen. Reason being, the humble hydrogen molecule, for a long time they thought, it really didn't do much. As it turns out, it's one of only 4 elements that's present in every living organism, that being hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon. And as it turns out, we are made of 75% hydrogen in terms of molecules. So the properties of hydrogen, molecular hydrogen, H2, when you add it to water, or which is called hydrogen enriched water, or you can breathe it in as a gas, or you can bubble it into a bath and you can take it up transdermally. Hydrogen operates primarily in 3 ways. Its best quality is it's a selective antioxidant, and what that means is it only takes out bad free radicals. So the hydroxyl radical, OH free radical, which are naturally created just through respiration. It happens in our cells, again within the mitochondria. It's a little bit ironic, but as we breathe, it slowly kills us because we create these free radicals. And those free radicals, which I should point out, not all free radicals are bad, and we need a certain balance of them. But the hydroxyl radical, it damages the DNA in the cells, and the hydroxyl radicals OH. So you combine that with hydrogen and it just converts it to water. So it's very, very good. It takes inflammation out of the body. It's anti-aging. And in Japan, they're way ahead of the rest of the world. They actually use it in their mainstream medical system. They use it in hospitals. Yeah, they're way ahead of the world in Japan. And it's also a cell signaling molecule. So it helps from a cell signaling perspective as well. So the long and the short of it is, any which way you can get hydrogen into you, it's a good thing, because its main property, not its only property, it's a selective antioxidant, which means it only takes out the bad things, but it leaves the good free radicals.
Just quickly on the not all free radicals are bad. You just expand on that just a little bit.
So it's probably a little bit like the debate that happened around skin cancer and sun. And they, it was a very effective campaign that said, slip, slop, slap, which I don't want to take anything away from that. But today you find everyone walking around being vitamin D deficient. It was almost, the pendulum swang too far. And so for a long time, the narrative's been antioxidants are bad for us. The truth is our body needs free radicals, reactive oxygen species are bad for us. The truth is our body needs those. And it's all about creating homeostasis in the body. So when we've got homeostasis with free radicals and reactive oxygen species, combining with the antioxidants that our body naturally produces, like glutathione and things like that, everything works well. But when that balance gets out of whack, that's when it creates damage in our cells. That's what causes us to age. That's what starts to break down some mitochondrial dysfunction, and then that has these negative effects, throughout the cells and the rest of the body.
Excellent. You used the word swang. I like that.
Steve, is there a corresponding understanding in Chinese medicine around the concept of antioxidants and that kind of thing?
There would be. Off the top of my head, I can't think of one.
That's
but
all right.
using efficiency of energy and those kinds of things, that absolutely applies.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. All right.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's good. We started earlier on in the show. We sort of touched on the idea of sickness and transformation, like going through what in a shamanic sort of sense would be an initiatory sickness, which is taking you into a process of transformation, and then of course you started to describe your own healing process, which then motivated you to heal other people, which is the classic kind of wounded healer story. And I guess, in a sense, even though we sort of categorize some people as doing shamanic work these days, we're all, shamanic in some sense, and particularly in these latter, it's a particularly strong theme in the transition from first tier to second tier, because we're opening up to this multi-dimensional awareness, and I think this is part of the reason why we're having another psychedelic renaissance revolution at the moment. And these psychedelic medicines are particularly good for bringing awareness to multidimensionality. So I imagine this is a relatively common theme out there, that a lot of people are having this experience of becoming sick, perhaps not realizing that it's an initiatory sickness of some sort, and that it's part of a transformational process. And Steve, what's your experience on people coming to you who fit that kind of mold?
I guess one of the things I see is people who have had a range of peak experiences of different kinds, is that they have expanded their boundaries of what's potentially normal, or what their experiences are. So as a result of that, their normal day-to-day life becomes more stable after a while. So that what they're experiencing on a day-to-day level is more in balance. The other thing that I get a lot of is people that have been medicated, whether it's pain medications or antidepressants or things like lithium, that are numbing or buffering everything down to create that same kind of narrow range of experience, rather than something like psychedelics that will create an expansion, and then your normal range seems more stable relative to that. So there's that different approach.
Yeah, I guess you could say that some of the regular mainstream pharmaceuticals are almost blocking or slowing down the
absolutely
experience of the transformative
and then
illness.
One of the things that happens though is, as people take them for a long time, they become less effective, or they have increased systemic effects or side effects. So they want to come off them, and then that's often a very difficult process, which in itself is shamanic initiation. So you've got people like Dr. Kelly Brogan, MD, who's a psychiatrist in 3 different registrations in the US. She's got a book of mind of her own. It's an amazing book that describes antidepressant withdrawal as a initiatory experience, and her work's amazing.
Yeah. And Ashoka, I imagine, like, I've been to your clinic and I've tried the different modalities that you have there. I imagine that occasionally somebody might have a transformative experience during one of the treatments.
The transformative experience is usually it's not like this blinding flash of something that happens. It's more of a slow and steady thing, where it typically goes something like this. A typical pattern we see is people come in, they're feeling suboptimal, to put it mildly, and just through cellular rejuvenation they start feeling better and better and better, and then it creates what I call an upward spiral. And that upward spiral that then motivates them to go and do other things, like change their diet or start doing exercise or something else. And this upward spiral, I think, also corresponds with an uplift in consciousness.
Yes.
It's the beginning of that process.
Yeah.
And really what our goal at the clinic there is, one, to not only do that here in Australia but around the world, is to create these clinics where people can come in suboptimal, and they, over a period of time, it's not a one-shot deal, but over a period of time, maybe a couple of months, they find themselves in a complete new reality. And so we've had a client that came in with an autoimmune disorder, and after 3 months, I could show you the photo. This person looks completely different, and the before and after. And through that time, she went on to start her own business, to create a whole new business. Her whole income went up, but more importantly, she just felt better within herself, and she was looking better within herself, and she just elevated.
Because it literally means the way you're talking, that slow and steady approach, because we're talking about two things here, which are both maybe the comments from all of you about that. The peak experience, which can happen in a variety of ways. It can just happen to you, or it might happen in meditation or a psychedelic experience, for example. But also that slow and steady approach that you're talking about. So I guess for some people, one or the other, or perhaps both, is valuable at different times. But also, I've lost my point now, but so comment on that one first.
Yeah, I'll just jump in there and say what you're really talking about is the difference between evolutionary change and revolutionary change. Yeah. And evolutionary change, it means, some people call it minor change, but it's small steps to, across the bridge to something new. And revolutionary change is when you kind of bust through a barrier that's been holding you back, and so you have this sudden increase, in the quality of experience. But essentially, you're just talking about the change process happening in at different rates,
different ways.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say too. Is that in that slow and steady change, that example you gave there, is it also the case that that people's lives and their connections with other people change, and maybe the people who come and go from their lives shift too? Their whole perspective occurs in a different way, so they find themselves in a different community even. Do you see that happening?
Very much so, from the perspective that once we start to raise our frequency, we attract more things into our field. And this is the quantum field. The reality is we are all connected. We're all part of this one quantum field. And as we raise our frequency and vibration, it's as if we give the antenna that we have to download information from the quantum field or download experiences or people becomes boosted. And Tesla was a famous quote of Tesla. He said, "I'm not smarter than anybody else. I've just got a better antenna." And he would download information from the quantum field, which is where all information resides, way before the technology ever existed for it to be built. And then he'd go and create the technology to bring that into reality. So the more we increase our frequency, the more we increase our vibration, the more we attract into our lives. The bigger our field, or the bigger portion of the quantum field we start to experience.
And your biocharger machine is actually a Tesla coil, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the biocharger has a number of different technologies in it. It does have a Tesla coil in it, so it's definitely some Tesla technology. It also has a multi-wave oscillator. This is the work of Dr. George Lakhovsky. He had a very novel approach to cellular health, and he said that through the concept of resonance. He said that everything has a natural resonance, which is true. Everything does have a natural resonance. Our cells have a natural resonance. And a heart cell has a different resonant frequency to a lung cell, to a kidney cell. And when we have dis-ease in the body, some of those cells start to oscillate or vibrate at a different resonant frequency to the healthy cells. But if you hit them with the right resonant frequencies, which is what the biocharger does, if you hit them with the right resonant frequencies, a bit like someone singing out of tune in a choir, the choir can bring them back into tune. So if you hit those cells that are vibrating or oscillating out of tune with the right resonant frequencies, it brings them back into harmony with the body.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Well, I expect in the second half of the show we'll probably come back and talk a lot about resonance, frequency and vibration. I think was kind of what we're talking about overall in some sense.
You've been listening to Future Sense, a podcast edited from the radio show of the same name, broadcast on Bay FM in Byron Bay, Australia, at bayfm.org. Future Sense is available on iTunes and SoundCloud. The future is here now. It's just not evenly distributed.